Well, we'll start off with the prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Punuktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great divine energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om Triyambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarokamiva Bandhanat Mrityo Muksheya Mamratat. We worship the three-eyed Lord, the auspicious one, who is fragrant, who nourishes all the beings. May that one liberate us from death, even as a cucumber is severed from its link to the creeper. For Hindus, yesterday was Shivaratri, and so maybe people may be of wider persuasion may be wondering why we are discussing this morning Shiva, but we have to see that Vedanta philosophy is the philosophy of Hinduism. That doesn't mean to say we have to be religiously or culturally Hindus, but what it means to say is it is worthwhile exploring the philosophical aspects of different portrayals of the truth. Since we cannot see the ultimate principle with our eyes or hear with our ears or any of these things, some kind of abstraction or representation is required. And so for this reason, art is extremely important. For example, in the Western world, in the 16th century, there was the great Renaissance in art. And if we study it, we'll find it is outrageous, because it's shifting art to try to understand some mystical things. And so the only way we can exercise the imagination outside of the normal conventional world and scenes, for example, scenic painting was frowned upon as extremely inferior. Landscapes, very inferior. And portraits, well, that's kind of standard. The Renaissance brought in a kind of exaggerated artistry that you could only find in the wildest of your imaginations. For example, we can look on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and you'll see exaggerated postures, dramatic expressions, all artistically presented, unlike what was previously there before. And some of the Renaissance art will be extremely distorted, if you will. Now, of course, it's popular to think that that era, the Renaissance, was bringing in Greek culture, and there was a certain element of that, no doubt. But the question arises then, how do we anthropomorphize and bring to our actual real awareness the various things beyond the scope of the mind? The absolute, the mind comes back together with the senses, says the Upanishads. And so art is a very important aspect of this. Imagine now, in the ancient days, somebody meditating in a suitable environment, surrounded by snow-capped mountains, forests, and you look out, and as you're meditating, it strikes you that the mountain doesn't move. It is solid. It can represent the kind of calmness that I want to find within myself, and the kind of calmness I actually do find. Something like the calmness of the mountain. As soon as I see the mountain scenery, many questions disappear. And if you are looking at life, say, for the first time, as our ancestors did, you would have wondered many things. Why is the sky up? Why is it blue? Why does the sun rise and take a journey across the sky, apparently, and reincarnate in the morning? What is this thing called birth? What is this thing called life? What is this thing called death? And so, on many, many artistic representations, presenting a puzzle come out as modern art. We find it as pictograms in caves or on rocks. We find it as petrographs, that is, scratchings in rocks, which develop pictures. And in the most ancient cultures in the world, we see these cave paintings or cave representations, sometimes in wonderful pigments, not only routine scenes such as hunting, but also scenes such as birth, scenes such as death, scenes such as extorted scenes that we actually pick up thousands of years later in modern art. Going back to primitive kind of art to represent with the same purpose in mind, how can we investigate and explain the various mysterious aspects of life? It is said that abstract art in America really began with the Theosophical Society trying to, Annie Besant's book, trying to explain the mysteries of the universe. But then if we go to Theosophy, we have to find the roots in the Vedanta system. So you see a chain reaction relevant to everybody. And so, looking at this mountain, it might have occurred to the meditator that a person could be seen in this way. And this person we could name as Rudra. Rudra later developed into many, or maybe first many, many Rudras, a group of beings that were responsible for some kind of running in the universe. And it's now not unusual to have an idea when we investigate things, noticing that there is a cycle of birth, life, and death to apply to the entire cosmos. And the great mathematician and scientist Roger Penrose, well-respected Sir Roger Penrose, has now overthrown standard cosmological models in favor of eons coming in, that the universe pinches off, it has its end, and then is the seed really for the next incoming universe. And so he has that idea of a cyclical universe. Other people also have some idea of a cyclical variety rather than a linear universe that starts off with a bang somewhere and then gives us inexplicable forward movement. And that overall forward movement that has become a standard model has really been shaken up through modern observations. And so there are many question marks. But the ancient people, along with modern people, saw if there is birth, there must be, no doubt, life. There must be an end to it. There must be a dissolution of it. This must be true of the entire cosmos. And so if there is one pure being that is there, we see it comes out in a threefold way, something like a trinity. Can we compare this trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva to a Christian trinity? I believe we can. I believe the concepts will be very similar because I think the Trinitarian concepts have a great deal of Eastern influence in them, maybe via the Greeks, the ancient Greeks and Persians. Anyway, whether it's true or not, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that in order for us to enrich our concept of the inconceivable, then we have to take the inspiration of thoughts that occur to us, representations that occur to us, put in an artistic way, so that when we replay the experience, we get the experience of the original meditator. And so it may well have occurred to the meditator, say in the Himalayas, that I'm living in a wild forest, there's a naturalness about it, there's a beauty about it, there's an absence of complexity about it. There is the beauty of nature. And in amidst this, these glorious, glorious mountains that represent perhaps the noblest truths, the highest truths. And in the depths of meditation, it's easy to see a face appearing. It's easy to see a figure appearing. It's easy to see, the wilderness of the hair, where from the melting part of the snow in the mountains coming down as a river, becoming a mighty river. And it's easy to see that it's very calm, and yet amidst a wilderness, which we call nature. And it's easy to see that this is a contribution of three composite aspects to nature itself. Because birth, life, and death is obviously coming back to one origin. And when it expresses itself, it comes out as creation and creativity. It comes out as sustainability. It comes out as dissolution. What began has to end. This was obvious to the ancient people. So that when we study this, that is dispensing our ignorance and therefore is lucky or auspicious to us, then we can form a picture, and we call this picture the auspicious one, Shiva. But what about Rudra, going back to the Vedas? Is there any connection? Well, yes, there is a connection. And the connection is that one of the epithets of Rudra will indeed be the auspicious, one who is auspicious, Shiva. And so this auspiciousness, this aspect of auspiciousness comes, but is it auspicious to have destruction? Yes, because what we call this nature is really the origin of our own ignorance. And when something is there to dispel our ignorance, it is the most auspicious thing we can think of. We think something that is auspicious or lucky is when you win the lotto, or when some kind friend brings something, or when you are in a privileged position, or when you have some kind of success. Well, of course, this is certainly a part of auspiciousness, a part of luck, good luck. But can we actually steer our luck by discovering these ancient truths? Can everything become auspicious for us? Can everything be of the highest order when we introduce noble ideas? So Shiva is what we celebrated yesterday, MahaShivaratri. That is the supreme, the greatest night, according to those people who feel that they can worship this aspect. And this aspect not different from any of the other aspects contained in the Trinity, not different from Brahma, not different from Vishnu, because they're all different facets of the same entity. And so in Christianity, there is the Creator. We can think of this as a fatherly figure. Well, all we have to do is think of it as a motherly figure, and we might have some more meaning for some. Anyway, we have a father figure, a creator. And then we have a son, which is Logos, something which gives us a sustainability that uplifts the world, some cosmic balancing power, the cosmic mind coming from age to age to uplift us and creating a certain order and rhythm to the universe. And then there is the one that dissolves everything nicely, that brings everything back into its original pristine equilibrium. And this equilibrium is being discussed in cyclical models these days by modern cosmologists. So in this ancient Vedic or Hindu way of looking at things, we see that this whole thing comes back to a state of potentiality, equilibrium, and that we call Shiva. And nothing much is happening there. In fact, nothing at all is happening there. And it's compared really to the deepest sleep in the universe, what we might call a yoga nidra. It brings us back in our own personal experience to this mystical thing that we call deep sleep. We can't really recall anything. And in more modern times, we can induce this. We can induce this by anesthetics, which actually nobody really understands how it works. We just know, okay, general anesthetic, you give somebody drifts off and they wake up and they don't know where they have been. So we see that these three components, which we call gunas, the composition of the entire universe, made up of sattva, rajas, and tamas. We see the rajasic aspect coming out as Brahma, that is the projection of something. And in physics terms, we call it electrical energy. And then we have this sustaining aspect that keeps things moving, keeps things in motion, keeps some regularity going, operates the various laws of nature. And this we call Vishnu, which means the one that pervades everywhere. Brahma, from Bra, the root, same root as Brahman, that says indicates that there was a beginning somewhere, there was an eruption, and then that went on. And its energetic aspect, we would call Saraswati. And in those days, in the ancient times, it was called Vak, the word. And we see Logos. You can see all this correlationship. But then, of course, there has to be an end to it all. And so tamas is there. Shiva represents this tamasic aspect. And so therefore, as a figure, as an anthropomorphic figure, we would have Shiva as pure white, just like the driven snow on the mountain is pure white. We would see it as an area of calmness. And Shiva is not represented as any other deity in Christian art or in Hindu art or Buddhist art. We find no example like Shiva. Shiva is the hippie god because Shiva seeks company from those that we would typically reject. Look at the compassion. Hangs around with ghouls and ghosts and people who are disfigured. Its garland is a snake hanging around the neck, and it is he wears a tiger skin that is rajas, so he's not entirely tamasic, and he is also in meditation as a figure we're commonly used to, and this is then the sattvic element. And a third eye gives us insight, intuition. A meditator, he is Yogeshwara, he is the monarch of meditation, yogic states, with eyes half closed, completely absorbed in his own pristine nature. And then we have the half moon, which is there. You can see the mountain, and there's the half moon that appears, representing the mind, representing light. And then we see that he's naked with these strange garlands, and we see that inside we'll find a darker color that sometimes in art comes out as a blue color, but actually Shiva is white, and in the Vedas, red, actually, because there's some dynamic aspect to it. This dynamic aspect comes in a second portrayal. That second portrayal we see as atomic energy, Nataraj, the dancing Shiva. And as has been pointed out over the last few days, we find this as an appropriate representation of atomic energy going on all the time, things appearing, things disappearing, and framed dancing figure with one leg upraised. We can almost feel the joy of the universe operating. Not only is Shiva, therefore, immersed in his own nature, that's one form, the meditating Shiva. But we also have the dancing Shiva, the expressive Shiva, representing the entire cosmos, where the drumbeat of the universe is going on, the rhythm of it. And as soon as that playing stops, then the whole universe comes into a condition of potentiality. How to represent this subtle potentiality and this absolute aspect of it? Well, the third representation is there, and that's in most of the Shaivite temples. You'll see it represented as a sign. Sanskrit for a sign is linga, lingam. So a linga means a sign. Where do we get it from? Well, imagine two young children, innocent children, in a bath. We won't know, there's no external sign that we can see on the face of it, of which one is male, which one is female. But of course, we can see the one distinguished from the other. And we can also see how a dome-shaped thing represents Mount Kailash. In mythology, Shiva is supposed to reside at the top of that. And so we cannot see Shiva. What we do is we see this representation. By inference, it is there. We have stories about Shiva coming as a vast column of light. You can't see the beginning, you can't see the end of it. So this, Thomas, this centrifugal inertia, this tendency towards dispersion and annihilation is part and parcel of the entire universe that we acknowledge. And we see these three principal aspects. We see the meditating aspect, which means that we are catering for devotees, a dualistic philosophically dualistic system, where we can appreciate this Lord in order to love, to serve, to offer, to worship in a conventional way. Conventional, of course, means doing abhishekam, that is pouring nectar of 6 items really, that is a milk representing purity, and then we have various other things going on, water also representing purity, and honey representing sweet ambrosia, the sweetness of bliss. And we have yogurt also, and so on like that, and bilwa leaves. So 6 items may be there, 7 if you include the bilwa leaf. Very simple offerings, nothing elaborate. So it teaches us the ideal of renunciation. It teaches us the ideal of purity, and it tells us about creation as well as preservation as well as destruction, emphasizing this aspect. And then away from the dualistic aspect, where we can meditate there and get to the same kind of unity of existence experienced by the original conceptions which were there from the yogis who meditated on this aspect. Then, of course, we'll have this dancing Nataraja, as I mentioned, because it's not just this alone. We can cater for the Vishishta Dvetas, which say that the whole world is actually a divine thing. Something like panentheism that acknowledges nature itself is part and parcel, is in fact an expression, a manifestation of this creative energy. And when it stops, well, we just have darkness. There are many myths, mythological stories that illustrate to children and others, we're all children, that the explanations for the anthropomorphic configurations we find in art. And all art is there, really, for us to reflect on. Then, of course, we have the lingam that I was describing, that represents Brahman, the unknown, the unseen, with no form. And here we find we are catering for the Advaita aspect, the non-dualistic aspect. So it is acknowledged, everything that is born must die. And as we go through life, this realization becomes more and more poignant. So all that is produced must disintegrate, all that is created must be destroyed. It's an inviolable law. And the principle that brings about this disintegration we can call auspicious. Now, it's a curious thing because most people don't think that death is auspicious. But for the dying person, it's very auspicious. They get a certain peace. They're going into this position of deep potentiality probably going through an area of subtle creativity as well. So actually, Shiva represents not only that, but the boundless void, the substratum of all existence. Now we know that there's no such thing in our normal experience as a void from a science point of view. And yet, this, what we call the human physical being, is absolutely mostly void. We don't see it like that. And even when we think that this vastness of space is empty, we are told, no, there is some bubbling thing going on. Mainly it's empty, but there is also underneath it the popping into existence and diminishing of energy, fields of energy, particle fields going on all the time, virtual particles coming into existence and disappearing in this vast field that we call Akasha. And so the limitless universe is also represented as Shiva. And so not only responsible for destruction, but also creation and existence itself. In one story that we know of in the mythology, Shiva speaks from the womb of the infinite pillar of fire to Brahma and Vishnu. They are his own aspects, no doubt. And the other stories make Shiva as being born from the brows of an angry Vishnu. Let's come back to comparison, the Trinity with Christian Trinity. We see the Father of creation, we see the Sustainer, but we also see the Spirit. This is the Christian Trinity because Shiva will have his Shakti. You cannot have Shiva without the Shakti. And the Tantric people understood this and emphasized the Shakti portion. So, again, Shiva is often called Rudra, and there are many theories about that. But Shiva, of course, is worshipped in this anthropomorphic aspect, but mainly as this linga, this sign. Whatever we see, whatever we look at in nature, is really a kind of signpost to say there's something beyond, something beyond, something beyond. And mystical experience, spiritual practice, what we commonly call religion in Swami Vivekananda's sense, that religion is realization, is this understanding that whatever we experience, if we have an eye for it, will indicate something more profound, something deeper. Coming back then to the anthropomorphic image of Shiva, we see that he has a handsome young face, white as camphor, his limbs are besmeared with ashes, and he's strong and smooth. So what was celebrated by Hindus yesterday has great similarity to the start of the ascetic practices in Christianity, starting from Ash Wednesday. So the whole period of 40 days during what we call Lent is all to do with controlling the senses, elements of fasting, all the things that we express, because Shivaratri, unlike many other celebrations, is a period of restraint, a period of fasting, a period of watching and controlling the senses and strengthening the will, suitable for meditation. Meditation begins with resolve, strengthening the will, and sitting and being able to withdraw in a progressive way into the inner chamber of the heart, so to speak. Naturally, he has to have 3 eyes. The third eye from the forehead between the eyebrows, the forearms, 2 arms holding the Trishula. Now, when we look, for example, at any icon, be it in the Eastern Orthodox Church, which are very clever at constructing these representations, and also when we look at the Hindu icons, we don't just look at the figures, we have to look at what are the arms holding. And since there's more than one object, you have to have more than one arm or hand. And so the trident is there. The drum is there, the hand giving protection to us, or a bhayad, there's nothing to fear. And then there is the boon-giving mudra as well, which is there. What is his crown? It's not the golden crown we typically find in Hindu iconography. No, his crown is long matted hair. And from this flows the river Ganga. And we have a mythology that suits that. He wears the crescent moon, as we said, as a diadem. Tiger skin and elephant skin adorn his body as his garments. Serpents all over the body, forming the necklace, the girdle, the yajñopavita, the sacred thread, is formed by a snake, arm bracelets. And there's also golden skulls around his blue neck that represents, of course, this domestic aspect, but also the saving aspect that we have. So, man being what man is, humankind being what humankind is, we cannot help superimposing our own states on how we conceive of the one being. And I think it's misleading to talk in Hinduism of gods, plural. It's misleading. We may know what it means, but how do you explain it to those who say we are strictly monotheistic, such as the Muslim community or the Jewish community and maybe the Christian community? Of course, the Muslims have this accusation against Trinitarian Christians. You actually are polytheists because you have three gods. Well, it's not true for Christians, and it's also not true for Hindus either. So it's natural for us to conceive of this highest as a person with a family and family life and so on. And this comes out, of course, in mythology. So Parvati is Shiva's consort. And this comes out as many other different aspects because you know yourself that you say you're one person, but you have many different moods, many different activities. And so how to bring this, of course, into our understanding and make things much more comprehensive rather than confusing. If you say many gods, it becomes confusing, thinking that each one is separate and different. And Hinduism fundamentally does not do this. All the absolute honor given to one is given the same to all. It's just that it's clearly understood. These are different manifestations of one thing. So Shiva has sons, Ganesha, Kumara, also known as Skanda, Subramanya, and so on. And then, of course, the large retinue we can imagine following. Nandi is the bull sitting on there, representing strength, representing solidity, representing also productivity, creativity, potential creativity of the world, and so on. Now, although he has traditionally his headquarters in the icy mountains, the Himalayas, he's also fond of roaming the earth. And where's his favorite place, do you think? Not in palaces, not in temples, but in cremation grounds and burial grounds. And we are told that very often this is the conducive place for meditation. I recall in Kamarpuka, Sri Ramakrishna's birthplace, public celebration we celebrate tomorrow. His Titi Puja, his actual birthday is on Tuesday. And so in his youth, where did he meditate when he was a young boy? The cremation ground. And you can see a tree where he used to sit and meditate, and the pond in the distance. But this is where people used to bring whoever died to that spot to cremate. Every village may have such a thing. So why does he happily reside there? Because he's not saying death is the end. Death is an auspicious moment if you make it so. It's a question of moving on. And so All of these aspects are in perfect consonance with his nature as the Lord of destruction, dissolution. But it doesn't end there, because we know that everything that dissembles is reassembled. Everything that destroyed comes into being again. This is the constant law of nature, constant law of conservation of matter and energy. So there are some delightful stories that go along with this. I don't intend to tell you all of them, but maybe one of them, just to illustrate how we can bring philosophy in an interesting way. So once Parvati, in a very playful mood, closed Shiva's two eyes. And of course, the entire world was plunged into darkness. And to save the worlds from this predicament, Shiva willed a third eye in between his eyebrows. That's how the third eye came about, sending forth light, fire, and heat. And later on, he opens his third eye, which is normally kept closed, and out of infinite mercy for humanity, to burn up Kamadeva, that is the Lord of Lust. Now, these various stories can be replayed, of course, in meditation and lead us to a more profound understanding than what a superficial relation of the story produces. Other stories, of course, relate to his destroying the sacrifice of Daksha, cutting off one of the 5 heads of Brahma, and so on. And all of these should not be dismissed, because you see, in our religions, there are some essential components. You can put them as layers. The foundation layer is philosophy. The second is maybe ritual, mythology, and theology is somewhere there as well. All of these are necessary in bringing this philosophy into a condensed form, so that not only can we digest it easily, but it leads us somewhere. Of course, it doesn't lead us anywhere if it's meaningless. So, the white body that he has stands for light. The light dispels darkness, just as knowledge dispels ignorance. He is the very personification of cosmic consciousness. And it may appear strange that Shiva, who represents darkness or tamas, that is the force of darkness and destruction, is pictured as white. We associate white with purity or sattva. Whereas, of course, Vishnu, we see, who actually represents sattva. Just to remind you, Brahma is Rajas projection. Vishnu would be sattva, and Shiva would be tamas. But it's not confined to that. So Vishnu seems to be the reverse. And Vishnu, therefore, is, let's say, darkness on the outside, but sattva on the inside. And Shiva is sattva on the outside, tamas on the inside. The 3 eyes of Shiva will represent the sun, the moon, and the fire. When we study the Upanishads, the Vedas, will see that if we look out, let's say on a day or night, the sun is there, the moon is there, and poetically we can imagine a cosmic person with one eye as the sun, one eye as the moon. Well, if that's the case, then what would be the other one? Fire. Seeing there's a correlation between the luminaries, sun and moon, there's also fire. These are the 3 sources of light, life, and heat. They are 3 sources that represent the fundamentals that we can express. I often express it as life, light, and love. We have a will to live because Brahma is there as the source. That is the eternal creation and the urge for procreation. And then we have light, that is that which reveals things to us. The intellect, our consciousness arriving as intellect, is one of the highest manifestations of this expressed consciousness. And then we have love. Love is auspicious, How do we associate love with Shiva? Well, he saved the world from a destroying poison, voluntarily swallowed it, says the myth. But what do we mean? It means that if you are calm, if you renounce, if you are able to destroy your ignorance, it's not the annihilation of everything, because what remains is love, pure love. And so you can see that the third eye will represent the eye of knowledge also, and wisdom, and indicates that the Shiva is omniscient. Omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence is a universal attribution of a personal deity. A personal deity that has potentiality, all powerful, as well as expression, and is always present. Sat Chit Ananda is the ultimate expression we have for the highest. Sat, existence itself, that is Brahma. It never goes away. And then we find Chit, this is Vishnu expressing itself. Ananda, the bliss of the destruction of our ignorance, the bliss of conscious annihilation, if you will, at one level. And then we can see the powerful wind blowing forms the hair. It's a very unusual representation, but a very ancient one. If you go to the Elephanta caves, just off the coast of Mumbai, you'll see whole carved cave temples dedicated to Shiva, all Shiva temples. And one representation would be the Trimurti, where you have the face facing the front, one to the side and one to the other side. And of course, this represents so many different things, but we can say it represents this threefold nature of this highest form, incorporating all these things: omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, existence, consciousness, and bliss absolute. Now, a tiger, of course, is a very ferocious animal in Asia. We don't find them in Africa. And it is merciless. It devours its hapless victims. It's a very dangerous animal. And so, in that same way, desire consumes all human beings. And the desire, we find it very difficult to fully satiate it. It can be compared to a tiger. And Shiva kills the tiger, wears its skin. And so even what he wears shows his complete mastery over desire, setting the model for us, leading us to the way of freedom. The elephant, why the elephant? The elephant being a powerful animal. So wearing its skin implies that Shiva has completely subjugated all animal impulses. The garland of skulls that he wears, the Mundamala, he wears, and the ashes of the funeral pyre, all to smear his body, all indicate the Lord of destruction, the Lord of death, which we do not have to fear. And the garland of skulls represents the revolution of ages, successive appearance and disappearance of the human races and other beings. And we have to remember that Shiva is the Lord of yoga and the Lord of all yogis, sets us as the ideal for a meditative, disciplined, ascetic life. Sitting in deep meditation, immersed in the enjoyment of bliss of his own self. And then, of course, the water of the Ganga flowing from the hair represents also this. It also represents knowledge or jnana, because the Ganga is extremely holy. And so it acts as a purifying agent for all of us. And we need not just say the Ganga alone, all water, because where does the Ganga go? It disappears into, let us say, the Bay of Bengal, and that interspersed between the over 70%, the vast majority of what is there on this planet Earth, namely the water, oceans. And then, of course, going back to the crescent moon, we can find another meaning for it as well, because it can stand for time, lunar time. It's a measurement of time in days and months, and we also have to understand that time is a human understanding of what's going on, not only just measuring the relationship between the day and the night, the sun, but also, of course, our own awareness of opportunities coming as seconds and minutes. So, time is the all powerful time, and it's just an ornament for him. Venomous cobras, these are not snakes that are just on the Lord Shiva, these are dangerous snakes. They symbolize death for us. If you're bitten by a cobra or any toxic snake, then your life is threatened. But they adorn his frame, and he has no problem with them at all. And he alone has the symbol of death as a decoration. No other portrayal has this. He can also gulp the deadly poison that is there, the halahala, to save the worlds. So all these points to one thing. It points to a representation of a conqueror of death. All the Vedic peace prayers, most of them are aimed at this. Lead us from death, lead us from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Immortality is the ambrosia we are looking for. And then, of course, we can see what are the other things that he's holding. We've mentioned already the Trishula, the trident representing the three gunas. There's the chakra, the discus, there's the battle axe, there's the drum, the rosary, the deer, the staff, the bow. All of these are there. A kind of magic wand that he has, a spear, a lotus, a padma, kapala, skull cap. All of these are additional things that can be portrayed in the iconography. When we say iconography, we mean also, yes, iconography, because we don't really have the statue, it's more the lingam which is worshipped. Now, of course, we can find a deeper meaning even. The trident also, it's an important weapon of defense and offense as well. It indicates that Shiva is the supreme ruler, and of course, as I mentioned, philosophically, master of the three gunas, master also of creation, preservation, and dissolution and their relationship. And so it is also said in the Nataraja form that while dancing, the Tanda Vandata, the Shiva sounded his damaru, his small drum. He did it 14 times. And in this way, he produced certain sounds. And the universe runs on sounds or vibrations. These are 14 basic formula contained in all the alphabets, arranged mostly in ingenious manner when you construct it into these sounds. So this drum represents all the alphabets, all grammar, all sound, the science of language, and every single vibration that is there, that comes out in a less sophisticated form, or creative form, or a most sophisticated form. So when we study all of these things, including the rosary, shows the master of spiritual sciences, or the magic wand with the skull fixed at one end, it shows that he's an adept in all the hidden arts as well, all the different powers and siddhis which we can think of. So when we look at these various representations, we should truly investigate the deeper meaning, and this should all lead us further on the inner road to our inner discovery. Well, I think that's quite a bit that we've had on Shiva, and also the representation of it, and why it is important to everyone to study these intercultural aspects We're trying to understand the most profound depth of things and also the highest aspects of things as well. I'm going to reserve a few moments just for maybe any final discussions or questions on that. And, of course, when asked how many are the gods, Yajnavalkya is asked this question by Janaka. This you'll find in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He reduces all the multiplicity to some single elements, and 33 basic elements, which are further broken down. 11 of these are the Rudras. And as we know, we're equating Rudra combined with Shiva. So Rudras, well, because there are 10 senses, 5 senses, 5 organs of information, 5 organs of reactions, called Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, but also the mind makes the 11th. So what is Rudra or Shiva? Shiva is the master of all the senses. And Shiva is therefore that one that transcends all the senses and the one that leads our senses through lingam, through the signs that we see, to the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality. Well, I'm going to leave it there. I think I've spoken enough now on MahaShivaratri and why it's significant for everybody, not just for Hindus. All right, well, we'll leave it at that then. Yes. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you very much, Swamiji.
Okay, nice to see you. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji. It was a nice meditation on Shiva.
Good, good, good.